So if those are the four air masses that affect the British Isles, then we need to take a wee look at what the characteristics of those air masses are going to be as they come towards us. So we start off with the tropical maritime air mass here, which comes from the southwest. Now, a little bit here about naming of wind directions. You will be used to your compass rules from before. Never eat shredded wheat. Now, all you need to know then are those four and the four that go in between them. So this is northeast, this is southeast, this is southwest, and this is northwest. That's all you'll need to know for GCSE, those 8 of them. Now, a southwest wind, which direction is it blowing in? Well, winds are always named after the direction that you come from. If you go up to Belfast for the night, or if you go anywhere else in Northern Ireland, you are still from Lurgan. It's your heritage. Be proud of it. So you're always named after the direction it comes from. So southwest wind is blowing from southwest up in this direction. So that is the direction of a southwest wind, named after the direction it comes from. And hence, here we have this southwest wind coming up towards the British Isles. Now, as it travels towards us, it's coming over the ocean, obviously, so it's very, very moist. It picks up water vapour, and therefore tends to be damp over the UK. Because it's coming from the tropics, as you saw in the last section in the video, it's hotter near the equator, and it's colder near the poles, so it brings this warmer air up. In the winter, we don't really call it warm because it's winter, we call it mild. In the summer, though, we do call it warm because it comes from the tropics. Right, next up we have our northwest wind, and that is our polar maritime air mass, named after the direction it comes from, coming from the northwest, from the polar regions here. Now it too is travelling over the Atlantic Ocean, so as it does so, it also picks up water vapour, tends to be very damp weather to the UK. And because it's coming from the poles, which, as we saw in the last section, in terms of latitude and its effect on temperature, that's cold. So it's cold in the winter, and even in the summer you would describe it as cool. Next up, we have our polar continental air mass as it comes towards us. It's coming here from the east. Here we have polar continental. In terms of its moisture content, it's mostly dry because, as you can see, for most of its journey here, it's travelling over the land. It's passing over continental Europe. Although just this last wee bit here, the North Sea, just as it comes towards us, it may pick up a little bit of moisture in the North Sea as it travels towards us. And as we'll see in a moment, this can bring snow to the British Isles, especially eastern England. But it's mostly dry. Now, what about temperature? Well, this is where it gets interesting, because this one has massive contrasts between summer and winter. If this comes in the summer, it can bring heat waves to southeast England. Now, this is all to do with that factor of continentality we saw in the last section. That the land heats up and cools down more quickly than the sea. Therefore, in the summer, the land gets very, very warm. You get these warm temperatures here, bringing the warm air towards the British Isles. But the land cools down very, very quickly in the winter. So in the winter, you get cold air here. And that very, very cold air blows all the way over Europe and heads towards us. It's got a name. You know that name, the beast from the east, can bring very, very cold air to the British Isles. And you'll get headlines like this: the beast from the east blankets us in snow. Finally, we have our warmest, driest air mass. This is your tropical continental. It's coming from the southeast up towards us. And it is very dry because it starts with the Sahara Desert, which is very, very dry. Then it travels over the continent of Europe, not the sea or the ocean, before reaching us. It does travel over a little bit of water, but the English Channel is tiny in comparison to the North Sea. So it's a very dry air mass, and it's very, very hot, especially in the summer, especially for the south of England. It can bring heat waves there If it happens in the winter, it's very mild. Now, it's very uncommon air mass, and most of our air comes from the west. This is our prevailing winds coming from the west, but occasionally we'll get the tropical continental air mass. Now, I say it's uncommon because you can actually see when it's about to, or when it has arrived over us, because you will sometimes get this kind of thing happening. Now, here is the Sahara Desert here, and you can see, I hope there, that sand that's been caught up and is being dragged northwards over the continent of Europe. This little image here down to the bottom shows a little bit more. There's the British Isles there, and there's the Sahara Desert there. This warm air is coming up this way, bringing with it all this sand from the desert. And then you can wake up the next morning in the British Isles and discover that your car, do this in red, extend it a little bit more, is covered in sand. Maybe like your family likes to look after the car, cleans it and polishes it well, but it will be absolutely covered in sand. It's come all the way from the Sahara Desert. Now, that's not very common, and that shows you how infrequent that air mass is. Okay, we're going to finish off by taking a look at a couple of weather maps here, which are showing wind directions affecting the British Isles. Now, I wonder, can you figure out what the air mass is that's affecting the British Isles at the moment? Let's trace it all the way back up to follow where it's coming from. Right, it's coming from the poles. It's coming over the ocean, so that is your northwest wind, your polar maritime air, dragging the cold air all the way down from there. What about this one? There's the British Isles. There is the wind direction this time, coming from the southwest, coming all the way up from that lovely warm zone, bringing mild weather to the British Isles, although stormy weather, as you will see. Those winds are quite strong. Now that, as it moves over, will soon be replaced by this. And you can see coming behind it, coming down from the northwest, that is your polar maritime air. And that shows us something of that battle that exists in the British Isles, as our wind normally comes from the west, either from the southwest here, or from the northwest here. And you'll see when these winds are meeting here, they don't seem to mix, and something very, very significant forms between them, which helps to explain the weather that we get in the British Isles. But more of that in our next section.